it's good if you can fix your weaknesses, but it's even more important to build on your strength, because that will create that differentiation versus the rest of your peers and the market that you are in.
How do you actually embrace AI in a company today?
I'm thinking of a campaign and I build it for India. I should also think, can this campaign be taken to a Thailand? And if it has to go to Thailand, what are the adaptations that I need to do? As a marketer, you need to form your opinion and you need to communicate and influence others. It's just not about learning some of the theoretical concepts.
I'm probably in my 20s. I want to become a director of marketing one day. I want to probably become CMO one day. What should I do in the next 12 months? Hey there, welcome to Marketing Mavericks with Indiefolio. Today we have Agnisha Ghosh with us, who is the Director of Digital Media and Advertising at MetLife in Singapore. She has a fantastic journey where she's actually started at the service side, jumped to the brand side, and then went from Mumbai to Singapore. So we unpack a lot of insights for any marketers who've got ambitions to go abroad and be a global lead of a particular brand. Thanks a lot for your time and welcome to the podcast, Agnisha.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Great to join you and the other Maverick marketers here.
I'm very excited to unpack your journey because I believe you worked with some fantastic large companies in Bombay, Singapore, two cities I absolutely love. And also were on the agency side with top-notch agencies before shifting to the brand side. But before all of this, I want to take you back to, I believe, your days in Sapphire. I think you weren't really planning to do marketing then, from what I assume in terms of what you studied. And if you can kind of tell me, I'm assuming there must be some point in that era of yours where you decided that, okay, maybe I want to try and do something in marketing. I feel there was a whole story behind why you went to Wellington. So can you take me back to why a bachelor's degree in microbiology at Sophia, and then how did you end up jumping into marketing?
Absolutely. I think a lot of things in my life have been happy accidents, as I call them. And this entire foray into marketing is possibly one of them as well. As you rightly pointed out, I started my journey more in the science background because, as a child, as growing up, and I might sound very cliched over here, I of course wanted to be a doctor. And with that, the interest in studying anything related to biology and science actually came up. And with that, I decided I started developing a lot of interest in microorganisms and viruses and things like that. And that's where, I decided to study microbiology, and, I went into Sophia's as well. And I loved it. I'll still be honest. It's a topic which is very close to me. And, even when COVID came, that was something which actually intrigued me even more to find out more. And I was understanding things possibly a little bit more or better because of my background as well. But okay, I will stop digressing, but I'll get to the point, which is Sophia's is actually very well known, for the college festivals that it has, right? And that's possibly where my interest in marketing started. So, which is Kaleidoscope is known as one of the biggest, festivals. And when I was in college, a couple of my seniors actually kind of pushed me to join them. And I said, oh, why not? Let me just, experience something more. Might be a new challenge. And I was given the challenge to be a partner of the sponsorship team. So basically, this required me to go and speak to sponsors, ask them for funding support. And with that, we would market them, their services, their products. And that's how the journey started. So which is, I loved interacting with people. You started, or I started getting a lot of sense in terms of, what were people looking for, when they wanted to collaborate with us. And also trying to match their expectation versus what we could offer. It's very different versus what you would do in the world of science, right? I mean, a lot of things are very, very process driven, and you follow a method, right? Like there is a
Yeah.
process and you follow a method, versus a lot of these things where you had to interact with people had to be instinctive, had to be natural. You had to think possibly proactively or reactively when you were talking to them. And that really excited me. So when I was in my final year, I thought, masters is possibly like a more planned approach in terms of what I could do in microbiome. But I think marketing is what excites me. And that's how the journey to marketing began, like so many years back.
Also made a move in Reckitt from being in Bombay to Singapore.
Yeah.
And if I'm not wrong, it was one of the Mead Johnson brand which you were, I think, leading CRM for, and then that led you to, I believe, move countries. I have a lot of people who right now are in MNCs, and they're really trying hard to be like, hey, I can see an opening in London or Canada. Can you kind of take me there? And it's, from my understanding, a headache. Like, it doesn't happen that easily. So can you kind of unpack how did it work out for you? And if anybody right now is in MNC and has ambitions to go abroad, what's a good path they can take?
I can share what my thinking process was, right? So, of course, I started with the India business, and I think if your aspiration is to move to either a regional or a global role, the way to establish yourself is start performing well at your local roles, because that is where your recognition will come, either at a regional or a global forum, right? So your performance at local has to be top notch. You're able to bring in solutions, or you're able to come up with concepts which cut across, right? So this helps in establishing yourself as a strategic player as well, right? So even when you work for larger organizations or MNCs, a lot of the people tend to be very local in their thinking, and it's not wrong, because even within Asia, we know that the demographics are similar and also different in the same breath, as I say. But when it comes to a larger organization, they are looking at scalability, they are looking at expansion, they are looking at replication. So as a marketer, when you're thinking of a campaign, like I'm thinking of a campaign in India and I build it for India, I should also think, oh, can this campaign be taken to a Thailand? And if it has to go to Thailand, what are the adaptations that I need to do? Similarly, can it go to Malaysia? What are the adaptations or changes that I need to do, right? And that thinking really helps in showcasing how your mindset is not focused on only like one thing and only on one topic, but how you're looking at it from a expansion or replication perspective, right? And senior leaders are able to see through that. So that is very, very important. So I was able to come up with some great campaigns which had success in the India market, and which had high potential of replication even at a regional and a global level, right? So as a result of that, the work that I did got recognition within India, and that recognition was again something that got visibility in the regional and global forum, right? So that made it easier, when my name came up in conversations later, I was not an unknown person that people were listening to. We hear a lot. I don't think, the youngsters who might be listening to come across this a lot, but a lot of decisions are not made in the boardroom. They are made long before that, right? So when that decision is being made, you need to ensure that you are in the top of their mind as one of the candidates, or one of the considerations that they're thinking of. The other area which I think really helped is understanding the brand that you really you're working on, right? And see how you can influence and what you can drive within it over and beyond what you're doing right now, right? Because sometimes making that move, and I'm not sure whether it is gender specific, or whether you need to put in additional effort. I've always felt that if you're able to showcase value, it never goes unnoticed, right? So I've always thought of that. Very important to build relationships with the right stakeholders. Again, doesn't necessarily have to be people only in marketing, right? You need to, again, expand your network, start talking to people, very important to let the critical people know of your ambition as well, right? And I think this is possibly a little sensitive topic as well, because a lot of people are, not sure whether, it's right to, whether their manager is the right person to speak to this about, or, should it be an HRBP who they speak to. But until and unless you know your intent, you're able to express your intentions, how is anybody going to tell you, how do you go ahead? And again, be open to opportunities, right? So when I wanted to make the move initially, I again was a little rigid, because I wanted to make a move from a local, which is like a India market, to a regional role, right? Which again supported multiple Asia markets. But when the opportunity opened at that time, it was not a regional role. It was again a Singapore local role. And I had to make a choice whether I take up the Singapore local role, or I let it go and wait for a regional opportunity to come up. And I always do, I love my Excel sheets, by the way. So I always do this analysis, right? The pros and cons of taking up a particular opportunity. And it can be anything, right? Like a pros and cons analysis is very important for me. And I absolutely did that. And with that, I realized that if for me, the intention is the move to a regional role, it can happen, possibly another couple of years down the line. But me being in Singapore takes me closer to all the regional stakeholders, right? Because I'm going to be there in the same office. It'll be easier for me to establish my credentials, my, the potential that I have to people who I see more in person, versus, me being geographically apart in a completely different country, and that process might take me longer. So I did that math for myself, and I said, okay, it makes more sense for me to, even if today it's a local role, it will be a new market, which I have not worked with. So let me take that bet, let me take that challenge up. And I took that, I moved to Singapore with, again, a Singapore local market role, but within a year, again, I moved to a regional role, right? So I mean, that's how it happened, right? So if, like in hindsight, if I would have said that, okay, let me wait, or let me not take this up, I'm not sure whether, any of this would have happened, right? So I think taking the happy accidents that I was talking about at the beginning, so this possibly is one of them. And, making some of these choices, right, with possibly little bit of gut instinct that you have, that it will work out in the future, is what you need to go with.
Usually larger companies have a higher risk. I mean, they can fail very badly, so they have a limited risk appetite. So could you maybe share some insights into how do you actually embrace AI in a company today, especially if I am working at a large setup?
So I think there is no two ways about how important AI has become, today to us. And it kind of reminds me of, when I started my career, and at that time is when social media was coming in, and, and no one thought at that time that it would become and it would change our lives the way it has, today. So at that time, again, I think the people who I see today who have done well were the people, so many years back, who decided to not dismiss it completely, right? Who decided that this is something which is worth paying attention to. And this is something where, again, your knowledge and skill has to be built as you move, the journey. So basically, I think that similar approach has to be applied even today when it comes to you at an individual level, which is there will be a lot of disruptions which happen in the external environment, but how are you aware of that, right? I think being aware of things is very, very important, right? Like what's happening in the world around you. So whichever industry you're working with. So I'm possibly generalizing here as a marketer, but as a marketer can be a marketer in healthcare, a marketer in FMCG, a marketer in retail, and all of them market things very, very differently. You need to be aware of where and what is happening in the world of AI and what is the disruption it's causing, right? You might not be the first player. There will always be these early adapters, in terms of companies, in terms of people who land up experimenting. So, what are these experiments about? I think very important to know that. But even before you go into that side of things, I think my first pointer would be that try and build your knowledge in terms of just the foundational capabilities of AI, right? So that when people are talking to you, you don't sound uninformed or unaware, right? So today, I think the great thing about the world that we live in is there is you don't need to pay a lot for any of these things. There are so many free courses available, whether it's from Google, whether it's from ChatGPT, which you can just take. So use that to upskill yourself, right? And this point I think I mentioned previously when in one of your questions also, is that our learning journey is ongoing today, which is, there is no full stop. So the more you learn, the more you are empowered, and you're going to have a better decision making process because of that. When it comes to AI, again, it depends on which company and what you are trying to do, right? Again, AI has shown success in some in certain areas, and there are still a lot of gray areas. Yeah, there's responsible AI, which is critical, and there are government regulations which need to be built in also today, which
Correct.
is possibly not coming in. So we are using it the way we want, but I'm sure over the years, as AI matures as well, there will be a lot more rules and regulations coming in as well. So even within your company, what do you want to do? Do you want people to just know what is AI? What is your intention? Yeah, so that's why I was saying, what is your objective? What do you want them to do? Do you just want them to know what is happening in the world of AI? I think it's very easy. Like with something like a chat GPT, you can just create a newsletter yourself by giving it some prompts and saying that just create a newsletter with the most recent developments in chat GPT, in the world of AI, and that's something that you can start sending to your team and your manager, right? I mean, it minimal effort, possibly 5 minutes or 10 minutes of your time, and that will help in people just getting to know. If you are already there, or if your company is already there, what is the next step? Do you want to make, or do you want investments to do experiments, right? So if that is your thing, you need to then look at strategically what are the areas where an AI experiment is going to be meaningful for you from a marketing perspective, right? And then you build, say, a proof of concept idea, which you then have to get approvals from internally within the organization. Now again, the question on risk appetite comes in, which is how open or close your company is when it comes to some of these decision making. But as somebody who's junior, what is it that you can do? Do you want to start more conversations within your company about AI? There are so many tools to do it, right? And I think you've been one of those people who've come up and started to decide do something of your own. If you want to do that, why don't you do like a lunch and learn session with your colleagues? It does not require any investment. Why don't you do like a Friday sharing session where for coffee or for chai, you just gather for 30 minutes and you talk about what's the cool thing that you've done. It doesn't have to be a research topic. You can say that, oh, I tried these 5 prompts and I tried it on DeepSeek and I tried it on Gemini and I tried it on ChatGPT, and they all gave me different responses. This is amazing, right? And these are conversation starters. This is how you can influence the people around you. So I'm not sure whether I answer your question correctly, but I think for somebody who is young within the workforce, in terms of influencing senior stakeholders, might be difficult. But if you want to start a conversation on AI, right, or you want people to know what's happening in the world of marketing and AI, there are many small things that you can do which can bring that change within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you said, it's a lot about like not waiting for this company to give you an approval. You don't need an
Yeah.
approval to start trying. And I think the more you'll try, the more you'll have use cases to actually discuss things about it and kind of bring that change. So fully take that away from your conversation. As a parting thought, could you answer this for us? That, let's say if I am a young marketer, I'm probably in my 20s. I want to become a director of marketing one day. I want to probably become a CMO one day. What should I do in the next 12 months, which will probably kind of benefit me to start the journey of being a marketing leader one day?
I think I put a lot of focus or emphasis on learning, right? And I don't think a lot of people completely agree with that. But as a person, as an individual, I put a lot of emphasis on learning. So before you go into learning, I think it's very important to do, again, speaking like a true marketer, do a SWOT analysis of yourself, right? Very important to do that, because you will understand what are your strengths, what are your weakness, which areas you're possibly you know you need improvement, and what can be an opportunity for you also, right? Like things like, as you rightly said, that 12 months down the line, if this is the role I need to move to, you need to then have that gap analysis done, saying that okay, so this is what is missing today. If you don't even know that what is your gap today, how are you going to work towards it, right? So for me, that would be a starting point, which is doing a self reflection and an analysis of where I am today, and be true to yourself, right? Step 2 would be do some sort of validation on that SWOT analysis with somebody who knows you, right? This could be a mentor, this could be a good friend, because you need to have a reality check also. I have also understood in my, my years of experience now, is that sometimes we are too harsh on ourselves, right? We are overcritical on ourselves in a lot of parameters. People who know us closely, I think, are able to give us a lot more objective view also. So get some sort of feedback from people whose opinion, whose feedback matters to you. Next is possibly get it from somebody who you don't interact with a lot, but have interacted at some point or time in your career, right? Because this person's view of you will be very different, right?
Right.
He or she might look at you in a very different manner versus, say, how your friend will look at, because your friend knows every secrets that you have ever kept, right? So there is that also, which comes in his or her analysis when they are coming up with a suggestion, versus a different person who's possibly worked on with you for a couple of years, or just on a couple of projects here and there, will have a very different view of you. So try and get a balanced view of what your, most importantly, what your strengths are, because a lot of people don't give emphasis on strength. People focus on weakness, right? And over the years, I have learned that it's good if you can fix your weaknesses, right? But it's even more important to build on your strength, because that will create that differentiation that you want to, versus the rest of your peers and the market that you are in. So I think those are some critical factors for me, which will be a starting point. And identify based on that what will be your learning journey. A learning journey does not have to be like a paid course, or a sort of online course. It can be about building relationships. It can be about improving your presentation skills. It can be about improving how you write or how you communicate in general, right? Because those parameters are very important as a marketer. You need to form your opinion, and you need to communicate and influence others. So it's just not about learning some of the theoretical concepts, whether it's about AI or social media. It's about being able to understand topics, complex or simple, and being able to connect with your stakeholders, right? So that requires a lot of both soft skills. It requires soft skills as well, right? A lot of people don't talk about it. So how do you grow on those parameters as well will help you shape up your career, right? Like if you just focus on learning from Coursera or learning from Google, but you don't know how to talk to people,
Correct.
it's not never going to materialize, right? So talking to people is very important. Networking is again very important. Take baby steps. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Reach out to people. I've always reached out to people. Like I always, and I think it goes back to what I was saying. Maximum I'm going to get is a no or no response. That's it, right? But very likely, and I think I've interacted with people who are amazing. And if you just ask people for a coffee, it's never been a no.
Right.
And a simple coffee can be an amazing, conversation starter. So that would be my very, very simple tips on how to get started or how to look at things differently.
That's some golden advice. I always feel that always do something as long as the end goal is learning. You never know, what you learn from. So resonate that with that fully. And that marks the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time on a Friday. I hope you had a good time.
I had an amazing time. It was lovely speaking to you, and also I think I was reflecting on my journey. It's sometimes you don't get that time to do that. So thank you for letting me do that, and also like. I just want to say thank you to the 15-year-old, 15 years old back when, when I started my career. And I just want to thank that person also, who's been consistent, who's stayed along, who's, been through all the challenges. And I want to tell that, you are going to be proud of yourself 15 years down the line. So it's a good reflection for me as well. So thank you for letting me go through that journey today.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again. And for everybody who's tuned in, thank you so much for hearing us out. If you'd like another marketing leader, please like, share, and subscribe. A new episode will come out very soon. Bye bye.